The Forgotten Door. The house stood at the edge of town, an imposing Victorian relic that time had forgotten. Its peeling paint and sagging shutters gave it a weary appearance, yet it held a magnetic allure for the curious and the brave. To most, it was the old Anders house, a relic of a bygone era. To those who dared step closer, it was something more, something sinister. For years, the house had been a subject of hushed whispers among the townsfolk. They spoke of lights flickering in the dead of night and shadows that danced in the windows despite the house being abandoned for decades. But the most peculiar tale centered on the door in the cellar, door that wasn't on any blueprint and, according to local lore, had only appeared after the Anders family vanished. When Amanda, a young journalist with a penchant for uncovering mysteries, heard about the house, she felt an immediate pull. She had grown tired of mundane assignments and craved a story that would make her name. The Forgotten Door sounded like exactly what she needed. Amanda arrived in town just as the autumn leaves began to fall. She'd rented a small room at the local inn and wasted no time gathering information. The townsfolk were reluctant to talk at first, their eyes darting nervously when she mentioned the Anders house. But as days passed, she pieced together fragments of the story. The Anders family, a wealthy couple, and their 2 children had lived in the house over a century ago. One day, they simply disappeared. No note, no trace, just gone. Years later, when new owners tried to renovate the house, workers discovered the mysterious door in the cellar. It was made of heavy oak, bound with iron, and had no visible handle or lock. Despite their best efforts, no one could open it. Rumors swirled about the door's origins. Some said it was cursed, a portal to another realm. Others believed it was where the Anders family had met their end. Amanda, however, dismissed such tales as superstition. Every legend has a kernel of truth, she thought, and she was determined to find it. Amanda stood at the iron gate, staring at the house. It loomed against the twilight sky, its broken windows like hollow eyes watching her approach. She hesitated for a moment, clutching her camera and notepad before pushing open the gate. The path leading to the front door was overgrown, the air thick with the scent of decaying leaves and damp earth. The front door creaked as she stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the fading light, and the air was cold, unnaturally so. Amanda's footsteps echoed as she moved through the rooms, her flashlight illuminating faded wallpaper and crumbling furniture. The cellar door was exactly where the townsfolk said it would be, at the end of a narrow hallway. It was heavy and imposing, its iron bands etched with strange symbols Amanda couldn't decipher. She pressed her ear against it, straining to hear anything beyond. Nothing. Yet, she felt a strange vibration, as if the door was alive. Amanda spent the next few days researching the symbols on the door. She visited libraries, spoke with historians, and even consulted a local paranormal enthusiast named Greg. It was Greg who suggested an old legend about a key of shadows, an artifact said to unlock hidden truths. The key is rumored to be buried in the town cemetery, Greg said, his voice low. But I wouldn't recommend going after it. Some doors are meant to stay closed. Amanda's determination only grew. That night, armed with a spade and a flashlight, she ventured into the cemetery. The tombstones stood like silent sentinels, their inscriptions worn by time. After hours of digging near a grave that matched Greg's clues, she unearthed a small iron box. Inside was a black, ornate key, cold to the touch and heavier than it looked. Back at the house, Amanda stood before the cellar door, the key trembling in her hand. She felt a deep unease but pushed it aside. With a deep breath, she inserted the key into a hidden slot she hadn't noticed before. The symbols on the door glowed faintly as the key turned. The door creaked open, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into darkness. A foul, earthy smell wafted up, and Amanda's flashlight barely pierced the gloom. Each step creaked under her weight as she descended, her heart pounding in her chest. The cellar was vast, far larger than the house above should have allowed. Its walls were lined with shelves holding ancient books, jars filled with strange substances, and artifacts that defied explanation. At the center of the room was a stone altar, its surface etched with the same symbols as the door. Amanda approached the altar, drawn by an inexplicable force. On it lay a leather-bound journal. As she opened it, the pages seemed to whisper, their words appearing and disappearing like smoke. The journal told the story of the Anders family's experiments with forbidden rituals, their attempt to harness a power they couldn't control. As Amanda read, the air in the cellar grew colder. Shadows seemed to move independently of the light, creeping closer to her. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, forming words she couldn't understand. She slammed the journal shut, her instinct screaming at her to leave. But as she turned, the cellar door slammed shut. The light from her flashlight flickered, and the shadows coalesced into a humanoid form. Its eyes burned with a pale, malevolent light. "You shouldn't have come," a voice rasped, echoing through the chamber. Amanda backed away, clutching the journal like a shield. The figure advanced, its form shifting and writhing. She stumbled, falling against the altar. The journal flew from her hands, landing open on the floor. The symbols on the altar began to glow, and the shadows recoiled, hissing. The ritual, Amanda realized. They were trying to banish it. Amanda scrambled to decipher the journal's instructions, her eyes darting between the pages and the advancing shadow. The words were cryptic, but she pieced together enough to understand that the altar was a seal, a barrier keeping the entity confined. With shaking hands, she placed her flashlight and a few objects from the shelves onto the altar, arranging them as described. The shadows surged forward, the entity's voice growing louder, more furious. Amanda began to chant the words written in the journal, her voice trembling but growing stronger with each repetition. The symbols on the altar flared to life, and the entity let out a bone-chilling scream. The shadows were pulled toward the altar, writhing and resisting. Amanda continued the chant, tears streaming down her face as the cellar shook violently. Finally, with a deafening crack, the entity was drawn into the altar. The cellar fell silent, the oppressive darkness lifting. Amanda collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. When Amanda emerged from the house, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. She clutched the journal tightly, her mind reeling from what she'd experienced. The house seemed quieter, its menacing presence diminished. Amanda didn't return to the town. She submitted her story anonymously, detailing the Anders family's tragic tale and the horrors beneath their home. The house was eventually demolished, but the journal remained with her, a constant reminder of the night she faced the forgotten door. And though she'd sealed the entity away, she couldn't shake the feeling that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed.